Welcome back to the channel. My name is Rosendo, and I appreciate y'all coming back, checking out another video. Today I'm gonna address a question that I've been asked quite often. Should I drive my classic car? So stay tuned, I'll give you an answer for that. All right, so what I wanted to tell you about that is, yes, you should drive your classic car. And if you stay through the video, I'm gonna give you a few reasons why and a few things that happens to these cars when they just sit for a long period of time, unused. So number one, I would say you'll start getting fluid issues here. Like for example, your oil on these engines, the coolant, your brake fluid, all of those things can degrade in quality when they're not circulated regularly. So they lose some of the properties, some of the quality, and they're not as effective, which potentially can damage some internal components to your engine and your systems. For example, I don't know if you're as old as I am, but back then you would change your oil in these cars and it was either 3,000 miles or 3 months, every 3 months, whichever came first. The reason they would do that is for this exact reason. 3,000 miles back then, so you had already drove that many, you used the oil like you should have, and it's already used up, dirty, etc. The 3-month mark was in 3 months, if you haven't driven it at all, you were still told to change your oil. Why? Because after 3 months, the oil would degrade. Quality, it would lose some of its viscosity, and it just didn't protect your engine like it should. So it's still true today. Some of these oils say that you can go 10,000 miles, 20,000 miles. I don't ever trust that many miles. I always change it. Even if I use those oils, they say 10, 20,000. I still change it every 5 to 7, but that's just me, maybe because I'm just wired that way, that I can't believe an oil will be good for 20,000 miles and protect like it should, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay, another thing I wanted to talk to you about is the rubber seals and gaskets in these cars, in pretty much any engine. Now, they can dry out and crack when you don't use them. They just sit there. And when they do that, then that causes leaks. Different parts of the engine, you'll start having coolant leaks or oil leaks when you didn't have them. But because they crack and they sit there, they'll start to leak. And I dislike when I have leaks in my car, because then I have to be checking the levels more often because it leaks, and you want to make sure it has the appropriate amount. But then your garage gets dirty. Anywhere you park it, you start getting these little puddles, and it's just a mess. So when you move your car, they get used, it gets run to temperature, running temperature. It gets hot, warm, whatever you want to call it. And everything lasts that much longer. So that's pretty important as well. Okay, another thing I want to share with you is your battery issues. When you let them sit too long, they can lose their charge, they can corrode. And then most of the time, just charging them again doesn't help all the time. Sometimes it does. But when it's corroded and has other issues, you have to replace them, and batteries are expensive. So if you just let it sit there and you have to replace it because of lack of use, it just doesn't make sense to let it sit that long. That's another thing. And batteries are getting ridiculously high now. So that's another thing that can go wrong on these classic cars, your batteries, if you don't run them. Okay, something else that I wanted to talk to you about, your tires. When you let them sit in the same position for a long time, they can create some flat spots due to the weight being on that same spot. And that, believe it or not, even though sometimes you can't really see it very much, it'll affect your handling and also the tire life. So it doesn't last you as long because it's just been sitting there. Tires are built and made to rotate, to move the car, to move the weight, shift the weight. It can't just sit there too long because it causes issues as well. Some of these things we don't think about. Also, another thing is that brake components like rotors and calipers can rust from just sitting there as well. That's not good. You take off on your car thinking you have brakes and then you don't have them, or they don't function, or they don't work as they should. Sometimes on your piston of the caliper, you'll get moisture trapped back there and it'll just rust. And when you drive it, you can't see that by just looking at your caliper. You'll drive it, you'll try to brake, and the piston doesn't come out of the cylinder because it's rusted and stuck. And that's a common issue. Your rotors, they'll get solid rust on them sometimes. That it'll still brake, but it won't be as effective as they should. Things like that are other things we don't think about when we just let them sit for a long period of time. Also, another thing that we don't think about often is when you just let them sit, your wiring, when it becomes just old, just sitting there, can become brittle. It can cause shorts, and they can also cause faulty connections when everything's just not used. Another thing that can happen when you leave them, even if it's in a shop, a garage or something, sometimes little small animals get to them, like mice, rats, anything like that. They can get in your car, they can nest in there, they can chew up your wiring from just sitting there. They'll chew it up, they'll completely destroy it. They can get into your upholstery, seats, things that cost money to repair and to fix. But animals like that can also do that. That's another thing, just letting them sit. That can give little animals time to get in there, nest, chew everything up, tear it apart. Okay, now I'm gonna give you a few things you can do if you are gonna store it for a while to help it last longer. Here we go. Okay, so one thing you can do on these old cars is you should try to drive these cars at least once a month. Minimum once a month. About an hour if you're gonna drive it. That way everything gets running temperature, hot, warm, pistons in your brake work in and out, they exercise like they should. Everything just flows the way it should. Once a month is minimum. If you can do twice a month, great. These old cars need it. And it's just to keep the fluids circulating and the components working properly. Another thing, if you are gonna store it for a while, make sure it's a cool place, a cool, dry environment. That way it prevents rust and moisture collecting in certain areas and stuff like that. Also, if you want to maybe connect like a trickle charger to your battery just to keep it moving, keep it alive so it doesn't die on you, that's another thing. But a dry, cool place if you're gonna store it for a while. And lastly, if you are gonna store it, don't forget to regularly check your fluids and do some maintenance like your brake pads, changing the oil to your engines, and also inspect your tires. Don't forget, tires are very important. That's what's between you and that highway when you drive these cars. So tires, always inspect your tires. So I hope I gave you some information. I know some guys ask, and some of us don't know. I know some guys know everything, but for the guys that aren't sure, these are some of the things that can go wrong with your car. In fact, my car, there was a while I was busy at work. It was crazy busy. I was tired when I got out, exhausted. And I didn't touch it for a few months. It kind of just sat there. Well, when I was ready to drive it, I got on there, tried to start it, it was dead. I charged the battery, got it started, and then my alternator wasn't charging. Things go wrong when you just let them sit, and that alternator was working perfectly fine when I parked it. So things like that, it's personal experience. So I know just leaving them there, you're gonna be spending some money trying to get it back up going. So might as well just drive it and enjoy it. And even right now, as we've been painting my Cutlass, one thing has happened after another, and it's taken longer than we expected. And now, since it's been sitting, my car had no leaks. I could leave it in the concrete, no coolant leak, no oil leak, no nothing. It was great. Now, I start it and I have a coolant leak. I have to check it out somewhere up here. I don't know if it's from the water pump or somewhere in there. I have to look now, as soon as we get it done, and start fixing that. I don't know, it could be a gasket, could be maybe something's loose. I'm not sure, but the point is I didn't have a leak. And now that it's been parked and not been used, now I do. So I'm here to tell you, drive your car, your classic car, just drive it. It's okay to drive it, take it out, go places, enjoy it, because you're the one that loves this car. You're the one that put the money to build this car. You just enjoy it, because we're not promised tomorrow. And if something happens and we die today, tonight, tomorrow, more than likely what's gonna happen to that beautiful car that you love so much and spent all that money on, kids or grandkids or whoever is left might not even appreciate that car and just sell it. Get rid of it, done. You're forgotten, your car's gone. It's sad sometimes, but not everybody does that. I'm not saying everybody, but sometimes that's what happens. And you didn't get to fully just enjoy your car. It was just parked there. So get out there and drive your car. I'll say that on a lot of videos. I drive my car sometimes state to state. I love it. I absolutely love driving that thing. Sometimes use it as a therapy. Sometimes when I'm really tired, I get out of work, I've had a hard day, I get out, and sometimes I've just taken my car out on the highway, came back, felt much better. It's kind of like therapy. It's awesome. So I hope these tips help you get your car out, and understand not to let it sit too long, because they create some issues. So thank you so much. We'll see you in the next video.